Thanks.
Hi everyone. Hi. We're in. No one ruined my intro today. Hello Jack. Hello Simon. And today we are also joined by Becky, as in Becky Health and Fitness, as in Becky from Stanza Fitness. I work with Becky in Stanza Fitness Gym. I think what we should probably start by getting you to just introduce yourself, Becky. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your philosophies. So go.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, I'm Becky Health and Fitness, Becky of Stanza, many aliases. And I have been a PT and yoga teacher for nearly 3 years now. I started into fitness when I was a teenager, probably just starting uni. I grew up being a ballet dancer. And I did that all the way from when I was about 3 years old till uni, and then entering into competitions, point shoes, tutus, and all of that stuff, very expensive on a student budget. So had to give up and filled that kind of hole with fitness. And I guess that's how I kind of got into it. I very much was definitely that very shy girl in the corner. Like, I'd only use the machines that were free, and I wasn't going to go and, rock anybody else's boat. Weights area was definite no. Maybe might go on the treadmill if I felt a little bit ambitious. But yeah, that's kind of how I journeyed into fitness. And then, yes, sort of 10 years later now, and I've been in the fitness industry for 3 years. I always knew that I wanted to position myself as a non-diet PT. So I have always said that I won't ever take progress photos of my clients, and I won't ever ask them, or I won't ever weigh them or measure them as part of the process. If they wanted to weigh themselves or let me know, and that can be part of the process, that's something a little bit different. But that is kind of where I've positioned myself in the industry, and have kind of gone from there with all of my clients.
Cool. So you mentioned the no diet PT. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Just tell us a bit more about what you mean, and whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. So I guess from a kind of female perspective, I think there's a lot of pressure in society to look a certain way. And I know there's pressure, of course, for males for this as well, but I can just speak to my experience and my clients' experiences. And I think a lot of this causes from diets and the pressure that diet culture puts on people to look a certain way, to be a certain way, to be a kind of prescribed version of perfection. And I wanted my kind of brand of health and fitness for people to be more than the diet, the aesthetic. I wanted it to be about enjoyment and people finding ways of moving their body that felt good for them, rather than put them into a kind of structure to lose weight for, I don't know, a bikini body type thing, or just that kind of route never appealed to me, and it was never something that I felt that I could sell to people. I never wanted to sell weight loss.
Yeah, cool. So you're talking more about the feel good, how to make people feel as good as they can, the best they can be, without necessarily putting them on any restrictions.
Absolutely,
fat loss wise, yeah, because we can get into that quite a bit, can't we? I mean, we've seen loads of kind of 12-week programs, 18 weeks programs and stuff like that, and it doesn't necessarily, as we all know, it doesn't necessarily promote good habits quite a lot of the time. In fact quite the opposite. Yeah, so thanks for that, Becky. Is there anything you want to ask Becky, guys, before we get into the belly of this?
I was going to ask what you were doing beforehand. So you said you've been in the industry for 3 years. So what were you doing before jumping into personal training, and you said yoga as well earlier?
Well, trying to decide what to do with my life. I went to uni and I studied marine biology, purely out of, I don't know what I want to do, but that sounds really fun. And that I went there and I loved my degree. I really enjoyed it. But there's not an awful lot of jobs in that sort of thing. Ended up kind of sort of flittering around, doing a little bit of retail, a little bit of volunteering, worked for a seafood company for a little while, and just realized that the fitness side was becoming more than just something that I enjoyed. It was something that I wanted to share with other people.
Awesome.
Cool.
I want to build on that as well. Not on that question, but so you're a non-diet PT, which obviously means you're just giving people freedom in terms of their choice and everything else going forward. So what would you do if somebody comes to you and they do want to lose weight as a goal? How do you approach that, and what do you do with them?
I don't turn people away necessarily. I think when I do that kind of preliminary process of, your consultations with people, you meet them for a coffee or whatever to just get to know them and what their goals are and what actually you might be able to do for them. That for me is a really big part of the process, because it gives me the why, which is a massive part of it. And at that point, I mean, I may not get all the puzzle pieces at that point, but there may be little bits that I can kind of tune into there that would be something that we could work through if we did work together. But it's something that I'm always upfront about with clients and potential clients. Yeah. I always say to them that this isn't, if weight loss and being this certain body size is your absolute goal, you don't want to talk about anything else, and you're not, you don't want to work through the process of maybe breaking down diet culture a little bit, then that's fine. I'm maybe not the PT for you though.
Yeah, no, that's cool. But do you guide them if so let's say they do want to stay with you and they do want to train me and they like your philosophy, but they still do want to lose weight? Do you guide them, and do you give them just some information as to what they could do to make changes? Because obviously when you just said there now, you have a conversation with them, you start building the pieces of the puzzle up with them, which means that you're trying to figure out what makes them tick, and the things that they may be struggling with and what they're truly looking for. So do you guide them in that way if they do want to stay with you and they do want to lose weight, or do you just let them figure it out?
I think you saying what they're truly looking for is a really big factor. I haven't really come across anybody in my 3 years so far that where I've said that to them, they've been, oh no, I still want to work with you, but I absolutely do want to lose weight and don't want to work through that process. Because I think for me that would put me in quite a difficult position. Anybody that I've, just as kind of examples, I've either had to sort of break that bond and send them off in another direction to someone that might be more suitable for them, which has happened less than it has when I've said to people, well, actually, yes, we can work towards the weight loss if that's what you really want, but what we'll actually do is find that true meaning and that true reason of why they want to lose that weight, because it is often not actually about the weight.
How they feel, how their confidence being affected, and so on and so forth. There's many sort of many facets to that. But no, that's interesting. But I really like the fact that you're actually willing to just turn people away, because there's so many people that just do not do that in this industry, and they're just scooping and sucking people in and promising them the world when it's not in their skill set, or it's not even in their interest, but they're just willing to take anybody on for money. And you're just taking people's money. You're not actually giving them what they want then, because your interest is not really in the client. It's just in the figures that you get at the end of the day, which is, I like that. I really like that.
Yeah, and I like the stuff about the why as well. We've talked about the why quite often on these episodes, and it's so important, because if someone can figure out what the reason is for them wanting to get to achieve a certain goal, they're much more likely gonna achieve it, I think, anyway.
And some people often figure out the why and then put the pieces together themselves if they truly look at it and realize, like, oh no, I actually want to do this because it's, my health is a big issue, and my family have suffered with heart problems and yada yada yada. it'll usually drive motivation. If they really dig deep into that why, then they'll figure out stuff. It's not too hard really. They figure out where you're going wrong in diets. It's just that sometimes people just don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
So I think with on that, I think you and I have in the gym have a couple of times talked about the emotional side of eating and how negative a spin people can put on diet, like we've said. So what have you worked? So what sort of people have you worked with who you've noticed have these kind of emotional problems with food? So yeah, what sort of stuff do you do with them? How would you approach that when you clearly know that someone has they may have even said to you, when I get stressed, when I get upset, I tend to go towards food. What sort of stuff do you do with them? Do you focus on just the training, or do you talk about lifestyle as well?
Okay, well, I mean, I think the first thing that's really important is that I don't ever diagnose anybody.
Yeah, of course.
I think that's so important. Obviously, in our field, there's, like you're saying before, Simon, there's a lot of people that will not kind of stay in their lane and will promise the world when it's just all about the money making. So I think that's the first thing that's really important. I think another thing that's really important with clients that I've worked with that may have had issues with emotional eating and maybe disordered eating is that I try and create really clear boundaries between kind of disordered eating and eating disorders, because again, that is not part of our profession. Eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia are really serious mental health issues. And I think that's something that if I thought somebody was coming to me to train with me and had or was going through the depths of those kind of issues, that is somebody that I'd have to either turn away or stop working with or send to a medical professional.
Yeah.
But somebody who maybe is, so clients that I have worked with before that struggle with kind of emotional eating, it's been more about control. So I think it's become about the psychological side, and maybe the fitness doesn't actually even come into it as much anymore. It's been more about the trust that we've built through our training relationship to then help them through a kind of disordered eating and emotional eating behavior.
Yeah, cool. So you find that by I don't know, 6 months to a year, once you've been working with someone and that trust is there, did they naturally open up to you, or do you ever initiate any sort of conversation with regards to eating lifestyle? Bear in mind, you have said that you're not a non-diet PT. Do you ever open up the dialogue, or do you kind of wait for that to come to you?
Obviously, with all of our job, it depends on the person. And I think for me, it doesn't even have to take as long as the kind of 6 months to a year. Sometimes things will be clear straight from the off, whether this person may have a kind of uneasy relationship around food. I think some of the big telltales for me are if somebody has almost like an obsessive behavior towards food and exercise. Like you can, from the way that they'll speak about certain things, say you see somebody once a week but all they talk about to you from the previous week, what have you been up to? It'll just revolve around everything they've eaten and everything they've trained. And I think we get to a point where we know our clients and know it's not just, they're just trying to impress us as their trainer. It's literally all they're thinking about. I think when that kind of obsessive behavior and that kind of anxiety around food and also exercise comes into it, I think that's where I start to have these conversations with people. But it is a really difficult thing to try and build up to kind of speaking to people about.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, like you said earlier, it's we have to try and deal with what we know. We can't be diagnosing things or anything like that. So often my approach has been to just deal with, not deal with, that's the wrong word, talk about the basics with regards to nutrition and what healthy food, what healthy plate looks like, and what not so healthy food looks like, and the proportions of which we should be eating it. But that's kind of where I've stopped with that. So do you ever go into the so you don't not portion control, but do you talk about high density nutrient dense foods or high calorie dense foods at all, or do you just rear people towards, you know, what a good plate should be like, or do you not talk about that stuff at all with people?
Difficult one. I don't really talk about nutrition in that sense with people at all, really. I wouldn't generally talk about a healthy plate or that sort of thing, because I really believe that it's so personal. And I think a lot of these things don't really, again, they don't come back to the food or the exercise itself. It comes back to control and maybe feeling out of control, and not necessarily to do with their body or their body shape or their diet or whatever it is. It's maybe more likely to be a life event, whether that's recent or old or past trauma. I think something that I realized along the way, I always knew, like I said, that I wanted to be a non-diet approach PT, but I think the mental health side of it and the learning that I've done along the way and the qualifications that I've done along the way have gone alongside that, and have really made me realize that I think it's so important to realize that clients often didn't wake up one day and say, you know, I eat when I'm upset, or they didn't just start doing that one day, or they didn't just start restricting their food and then binging and getting themselves into these kind of cycles. It will all have stemmed from something. And quite often, especially for me working with female clients, it is quite often a feeling of lack of self-worth. And it can come down to self-esteem quite often. And again, about that control, of feeling like they're taking control of something. That thing that they have the power over is their food and their body at that point.
Okay, so that's cool, because I think, so what you're trying to do in effect is trying the best you can to make them, to uplift them and make them feel better about themselves. And as part of that process, other things within their lifestyle should hopefully fall into place a little more. Yeah, that's really cool. I think so. Is that advice you'd recommend for not just coaches, but for people who watch our podcast? Is if that's, it's very hard to determine whether that's how you feel, like you said, but if you do feel like you fall into that category, was that what you'd recommend, is to focus on you first, trying to get yourself to feel much better, find things that you enjoy, and then let things kind of happen from there? Is that the approach you would kind of take for that?
Yeah, I think enjoyment is a word that maybe I throw around a little too much, but I just think it's so important. I think there's too many people out there that go to the gym, for example, and get on the treadmill, and they do it because they feel like they have to. And I think finding something that you actually really enjoy is really empowering and goes a much further way to being a healthy physical and mental behavior than it would be to go and think about burning the calories, or go and think about you know, I have to do this because today I have to do chest, or whatever chest day, or whatever it is. In the same way that somebody who maybe was going to give up smoking, though, you can't tell them, they kind of have to come to you in a sense. So they have to be ready to either talk about those, or to talk about those changes. And then, yes, like you say, as coaches, we're there to be somebody that they can trust to talk about, and to be a point of knowledge for them as well, to maybe ask questions about the nutrition side, about the exercise side, but always in a way that they're going to enjoy, and as actually going to make them feel good as well.
Yeah, so you try not to put pressure on them. Well, yeah, I think that's a really good approach, actually. I think we've probably all found it, guys. I certainly have, where I've been training someone for a year or maybe even more, and I quite often talk about nutrition to people, especially if they come at me with a goal of weight loss, and it's something I pretty much mention every time, and perhaps that's something based on what we're talking about, I could maybe back off a little bit here and there, reading the individual in front of me, of course. But there's been moments where people have always wanted to, they've always talked about it, and actually a year or so down the line is when something happens, and I can't ever quite put my finger on what, but something changes in their mind, and all of a sudden they start making changes, they start getting results. And yeah, maybe it does come down to the fact that they're enjoying what they're doing, their life's in a good place at that particular point, and it's much easier to do. If you think about the time constraints and of people's lives, the stress in people's lives, and the emotional constraints as well, I guess. And they can't, how many times have you heard it? I mean, Simon, we've talked about this before. People have just gone, I can't think about food.
Yeah,
I just can't. I can't think about food right now. I just want to get on with what I'm doing. I can't think about food, and that's. So I really like that approach. I think that's really helpful for a lot of people who have these type of lifestyles where they just haven't got the time or the emotional headspace to deal with it right there and then. Guys, I'm very aware that I've been bombarding Becky with questions. Have you guys got anything to ask her before I go on?
Yeah, I'm interested in the approach, because I personally, I don't like YouTube. I've never heard of a PT come out and say I'm a non-diet PT. When I saw your Instagram, I'd not heard of the term before, so it's like super interesting. I'm more interested in it from a point of view, because you mentioned it just now, where you want people to feel good. That's a massive part of your philosophy. So obviously training and being active has a massive impact on that, but obviously nutrition does as well. So that's where I'm interested in how you approach that side of it, whereas the focus might not be on the aesthetics of it, but the performance or the feel-good factor of it, how you approach the nutrition side of that, because it has such a big impact. How do you go about where you may see a client where actually, if we change their nutrition, they would feel a lot better? That makes sense?
Sure, yeah, no, really good question. So I'm trying to think of an example. So if I really thought someone's nutrition was hindering them, let's say, and I think that would be a really difficult thing for me to just not talk about with them. I think it's but it depends very much on the person, and because obviously when we see people, when we have them there in front of us, we can obviously do whatever we do training. I can physically see that they're enjoying getting a PB on the leg press or enjoying doing the boxing side of things, but I can't actually see or be with them to kind of hold their hand when they go shopping. Or, I mean, I guess I could, but we don't tend to be there when they're, they're filling up their shopping basket or thinking about what they're going to cook in the evening / thinking they're going to order takeaway, whatever it may be. So I definitely try and focus more on what I feel I know for a fact, because the other thing is that you never really know. People's have different opinions of what healthy is. Of course, we all know this. And again, my approach is so much more holistic because of that non-diet approach. They're not tracking calories, they're not doing macros. So again, it's all about that feeling. And then if they are coming to me and saying, I'm really sluggish, I feel really bloated or that sort of thing, maybe then we'll start to delve into things in a bit more detail. But it very much depends on that person's relationship with food. For me, I think it's a really delicate subject with a lot of people. Again, coming back to that kind of diet culture pressure, and I think where I sit as a personal trainer and sort of look the way that I do and train when I do and do the yoga, and I I'm conscious of the fact that I don't ever want people to feel like what I'm saying is the only way. It's always open for discussion. So yeah, it's about, again, building that trust and talking to the people in the right moment and when they're in the right headspace to hear things and discuss things.
Do you talk to people about, because you mentioned very early on in this episode that about how people should look based on social medias and various other magazines or whatever it might be. So on that, do you ever get people who talk about other like celebrities or something and how great they look and how they aspire to? Do you ever get anything like that? And if you do, what's your message to them? How do you approach that conversation? Because I know I get it. I'm just interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, and it makes me really sad when people come to me and say things like that they desperately want to look like this person, or this person has done this, therefore I must do that to look that way, or feel as good as they look like they feel. And yeah, coming back to what I said in the beginning, it comes from that kind of low self-esteem, I think, and that feeling of needing to be in control of something to then feel valuable. And if people are placing so much of their value on what they eat and their training regime and their this kind of superficial program of eating and training just to kind of look like somebody else or someone on social media, it's a really difficult thing to try and get people to unlearn or unthink in a way. And just I try and reinforce with my clients that their value is not in what they eat or how they train, and their value is in who they are as a person, and not how much they bench press or how many carrot sticks they ate the next day, kind of thing.
Tell me this though, like if you've got clients and let's say you're working through, you're improving their training, you're improving their performance, you're improving how they feel. Do you ever notice that people start naturally changing how they eat?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I think in a sense it goes hand in hand, but also doesn't. But I like it when that happens, because people have made their own personal choice to do that. And it tends to be as I'm sort of part of the discussion. If my clients have decided to kind of do that by themselves, they come to me and say, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, or I did this with my diet last week and it kind of felt good. And they're sort of coming to me for the science and maybe why they might have felt good, as opposed to coming to me. Exactly. But everybody's relationship with food is so personal. So I think it is so important that, in a sense, we're kind of just planting the seeds and there for the knowledge and there to share if they need it. But if they're finding these things by themselves,
it's better.
There's something just so much more kind of fulfilling for them as well.
There's a technique called motivational interviewing, and it wasn't adopted for personal training. It was more adopted for just psychology and helping people work through their lives. But that almost in a way is something similar to what you do, and because basically what you do with MI is that you ask them a load of questions, you let the people answer the questions themselves, and then they merely work out exactly what they need to do to make changes themselves just by you prompting the right actual question. So, asking them things like, if they're saying something like, "No, I really am interested in losing weight." All right. So it's weight loss that you want. Yeah. And, and what do you think you need to do to make that happen? And then they answer the question themselves. Well, I suppose actually I could change, I snack quite a lot, eat a lot of chocolate. So I think I might cut down on chocolate. And you'd be like, well, that's a great decision. Let's just check back up on that. And that's doing nutritional advice without actually giving any advice. It's letting them make a decision themselves that, actually, I know I probably eat a bit too much of this and I drink a little bit too much of that. And I'm going to try and cut down because, it would benefit me. And then all you're doing is like you're recapping. Oh, so how's it going? You said that you were going to cut down the chocolate. Yeah. I'm cutting down chocolates really well, but I'm finding that it's quite tough, you know. But it's something similar to your line of work where it's like you're not directly saying, right, you need to cut down this. I can see I can see all the highlighted points in your diet that are causing you issues and probably leading to weight gain, weight loss, whatever it may be. I want you to do X, Y, and Z. It's more just letting that person make the discovery, which everybody knows themselves, you know, where they go wrong.
That is the thing, isn't it? Like everyone knows pretty much what healthy food is, and everyone knows pretty much what they're doing wrong. And they probably don't need us to highlight it for them, do they? It's probably quite embarrassing quite a lot of the time, and an approach.
But it is interesting though about trying to help somebody enjoy all facets of their life, and then eventually getting around the food, because like you said before, you know, there's people aren't eating cake constantly and snacking on food constantly because it's just the food. It's traumatic events or people putting them down, and then they're getting the serotonin release from eating the high sugary foods. It's giving them that sort of like buzz, and then over time, I feel bad, I eat this food. I feel good, I eat this food. You know, it's all the context in which they're putting in then, and hopefully then with the stuff that you sound like you're doing then is you're changing how they're viewing all of those situations and making it a little bit better for them. So then they don't have to reach for that. If they're not as unhappy, then they're not likely to go ahead and emotionally eat food just for the sake that they're feeling stressed, they're feeling down, they're feeling sad. They're actually like, right, I need to do something else to get myself out of this mind frame. And it's not about nutrition for them, it's about changing their mindset, and then the nutrition kind of changes with that, because they're happy.
When things fall into place. So Becky, if you had like just a couple of things advice you could give, I know it's hard to give generic advice because it's like we've all said on these episodes, it's very much based on the individual you have in front of you. But if you could give 2 bits of advice to someone who feels like they fall under that bracket of, you know, not feeling too happy about their self-esteem or wanting to look a certain way, but the why is because they feel bad about themselves. What sort of advice, 2 things that you could give to that person, Mr. Random, let's say?
Just 2.
Just 2.
Okay.
There's plenty.
So I think, especially in the current world where everything is so available and so consumable on social media, whether you're Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Clubhouse, all of it, it's all there, and it's all there for people to readily start comparing themselves to people that are showing their best bits, their highlight reel, as it's often referred to. And I think letting go of comparison, unfollowing people that make you feel like you're not good enough, whether that be in a training sense. I know Kim Kardashian says that she does 1,000 squats a day. Whether she does or not, it shouldn't make you feel bad about yourself for not doing that. And the same as somebody who posts their plate of greens every day, or their smoothie, or whatever it is. You, again, shouldn't feel bad about yourself, whether you're eating a smoothie or whether yours is brown and theirs is green, or you're having Oreos and they're having a smoothie. Like, it shouldn't make you feel bad about yourself, and should not affect your self-worth as it does with so many people. So definitely maybe have a little social media detox. Hate the word detox, but I think for social media it really works. Get rid of people that make you feel bad about yourself. Just unfollow them. And if it's somebody, maybe it's a friend or an acquaintance, if you're really worried about unfollowing and offending people, mute them, because your kind of sanity, your mental health, and your relationship with food is so much more, with training as well, is so much more important than feeling bad if somebody else is posting something.
Yeah.
So that's number 1. Sorry, I know you
That's
said
right.
2, but I thought I'd just go.
That was a good one. That was a really good one.
Thank you. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed. Okay, second one. I would say, just coming back to something Simon said, you said about, I can't remember the exact word you used, but going into about how people certainly demonize food and name foods good or bad, whatever they are. And again, that'll be slightly different for certain people. They'll name certain foods good, they'll name certain foods bad, and you feel bad if you have a bad food, and you feel good about yourself if you have a good food. And I think all food is good. It's either good for your body, good for your mind, good for your soul. And I think when you start to reframe that and know that all food is good, you take away that anxiety about eating, and about training, and about feeling like you have to burn off certain foods, or about feeling like you have to eat a certain way. And you just start listening to what your body actually needs. And sometimes you need a piece of cake because you want to just feel a little bit good. You want a little bit of a sugar rush. You want that kind of comfort. Maybe you're sharing it over a cup of tea with a friend, maybe not in Corona times, but back in the day. Or you go for the broccoli because you're like, okay, I'm just going to bulk out my meal with a few greens because I've done a big training session. Like, you're listening to what your body actually needs, as opposed to having your diet prescribed by somebody else, or feeling guilty because a food is good or bad.
Yeah, that's cool. Take away that, and like you said, I think it takes away the anxiety, and I think that happens so often, doesn't it? We've seen it.
Well, the anxiety creates binges, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's like an absolute opposite effect sometimes, where they're like, oh my god, it's I'm trying to stick to a really healthy diet, and I've already ate chocolate, so I may as well just scrap the day and start tomorrow. And then they just go in this downward spiral of chaos with food. When really it's if they change their mindset and they were like, wow, it tastes quite nice. It was all right. I obviously needed it because I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
On to the next one, and then just forgot about it and moved on, rather than creating that like, oh, I've ruined it. Well, I'm going to ruin everything now. Just going to ruin the whole world.
It's also like you end up not, like you said, because of the binges, and then you end up with the anxiety if you have some of the, even a little bit of the food. I've talked to people in the past, and I've been like, oh, how's it going with the food and stuff? They were like, yeah, it's all right, but it's been quite bad actually. And I'm like, oh really? I was like, well, and they're like, oh yeah, I had some bread the other day. I was like, sorry, and it's like, because like I think we talked about carbs in a previous episode, and where they got so demonized a few years back. Some people are just like, well, I ate really unhealthy. I had a bit of rice and some bread, and it's just like, all right, we're gonna have to try and change that thought process right there. So yeah, I think I really like the idea of telling people that for whatever reason, that's the best I've heard anyone put it actually, why there's no bad foods, because so often I only consider this food is good for you because it's good for your body. I very rarely consider this food is great because you're eating it with your mates and it makes you feel good while you're doing it. And I think that's really, really important. Didn't consider that before. I think that was really well put, Becky. So thank you for that. Anything you guys would like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to, what I'm interested about is how you measure clients' progress. Because obviously it's super easy with the options that are available with things you mentioned that you don't do, so weight, body fat, photos. So I'm interested in how what modalities do you use in order to show someone they are progressing with what they want to do?
Yeah, sure. So generally it's just about like PBs, and feeling good about lifting weight, particularly for women. All of my clients at the moment are women, and I think there's something really empowering about getting into the weight section and lifting something pretty damn heavy, when quite often when they first started with me, that would not even have been in their universe. So yeah, it's if a client wants something that's a little bit more quantitative, then yeah, it's about upping those weights each week, progressing a little bit more. But again, that depends on the client, if they need that little bit more structure and they want that little bit more going up a level each week. But that's generally to be a little bit more quantitative. That's how I would go with that with the client.
And are most of your sessions based, like your session philosophy and how you write programs, people obviously, again, depends, but it's more based around strength and resistance training, or do you incorporate your other aspects from, I think, yoga, and then I think, are you also a spin instructor?
I am, yes.
Yeah. Do you incorporate those elements into your session?
Yeah, sure. So I do have some one-to-one yoga clients, and that probably influences quite a lot of how I PT as well, because that is, we could go on and on about and do a whole other yoga podcast.
We should.
That again.
Where we all have to do yoga.
I have a lot of free time at the moment, so anytime.
Cool.
Can I do the splits in 10 minutes?
I think with yoga there is a specific kind of it is about the connection between the mind and the body and the breathing, and there is a side of it that is so much more holistic. So I think the one-to-one yoga sessions are kind of totally different in a sense, almost separate to the personal training, but I think I bring in some of those kind of the ways of teaching into my PTing. If that makes sense.
100%.
I bet you're just like, oh my God, you're the tightest person in the world. Here, I know a stretch.
No, the tightest person in the world is definitely my fiance.
Yeah.
Nobody beats him.
I don't know. I've seen some people that can't reach their knees, and I really mean that. And that's shocking. Like from a stood up position, just
I did ask you not to tell anyone about that.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah. If it wasn't for your freakishly long arms, you wouldn't got there.
I've got. Well, they're not freakishly long. They're freakishly long comparative to my short
body.
You know, so that you know. I noticed you're wearing a Seahawks top there, Jack. I just noticed that. Then, did you stay up for the Super Bowl?
No, I watched the highlights.
Come on, George. Come on. Super Bowl's on at like midnight or in the middle of the night.
I watched it.
Yeah, I know, but you've got issues. So.
I've got lots of issues. Yeah.
Becky, I had a question, because you said you came from a dance background and now obviously in yoga. I don't know the answer to this question. If you feel like it's an epic answer that would deserve another podcast because it's big, then say, and we can do one. But I wrote down before the podcast, if you think there's the same kind of culture within yoga as they're in with dance, with eating. Because I know in dance, especially, not all areas, that's be too mean to say it's in every sort of dance culture everywhere, but I know there's a lot where under eating is quite a big thing in dance, to be a certain weight and look a certain way. Is there the same in yoga, do you think?
Not that I've experienced, but I've only been in the yoga community for a couple of years now, and I was in the ballet kind of crew for a long time, so I have a lot more experience of how that was kind of growing up as a teenager and kind of body image in that setting. Definite issue in the ballet world and across the dance world. I think there's so much of the kind of the body is your CV when you're especially when you're working towards being a professional dancer. For me, that was never something I was going to do, but it definitely relates back to being a PT as well, though, because that's something that's quite often thrown around, is that, you know, the way that we look is a factor into how much we know, and actually
not always.
We all know that is not the case.
So do you know of any girls who you knew within, obviously without naming them, in the your dance background, who have gone into adult life with problems with food that you feel stems back from their dance background?
I think it's really hard not to. I mean, you start dancing when you're really young, and I was lucky enough to have some really lovely teachers who weren't kind of the stereotypical, like you see in the movies, type really strict sort of throwing around really abusive language about bodies in a kind of way to make them work harder and make them better dancers, supposedly. So not to the same degree, I would say, anybody that I know really well, but stories of it, of people that sort of friend of a friend type people, it is definitely a big thing.
Yeah. And would you say that influenced you to PT in the way that you do, the non-diet PT approach? Was that a heavy influence in the reason why that's the approach that you take?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I've never really thought about it like that, but I think that's why, I guess my experiences with that and feeling like my body had to be a certain way to dance, and being around people that also felt that way, I guess later on has held in the mindset. It was not something I've actually thought about, really thinking dancing to then PT the way that I do. But yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, cool.
George, you're like a psychologist.
Sometimes Mrs. won't
he has
agree,
little
but
moments.
there's times,
most of the time he's so far off.
But there's a reason why I ask the questions and I don't do much of the talking, you know. Guys, is there anything we've missed? Is there anything you want to ask us, Becky, I guess, as well?
Just know who we are.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
I mean, we just only met Jack and Simon. I say met. You don't meet people anymore, do we?
Yeah, this is the new meeting. They're not that interesting, so don't worry too much about it.
So we have, I don't know if we have time, but there were quite a few questions that came in from people on the socials.
Should we go?
Instagram.
Yeah, should we do? Let's go. We've got 10 minutes.
Fire those away. So there's a question from Alice Zernia. Hope I say that right. If I say it wrong, really.
Great name, Alice.
But what are your best tips for motivation in terms of working out in lockdown?
Oh, difficult. I think we've all had a little bit of a flag in motivation, especially when it first maybe hit the first time round. It was all a bit jarring and difficult. And I think it's okay if your motivation dipped. Give yourself a break. We've all had motivation dips, even the PTs, we all do. But if you're trying to get back into things, just be a little bit kind to yourself. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Start with maybe 10 minutes, whatever it is, your thing that you enjoy, 10 minutes of yoga, 10 minutes walk, 10-minute training type session. And the likelihood is once you start, you realize that you enjoy it and you're going to go a bit further, maybe not on that day, but maybe in a couple of days time, but just start small.
Cool. Go on, Jack.
Do you want to add anything, or do you want me to read the next question?
You carry on, Jack.
I think that was a good answer. I don't think I could add much more to that.
Another question from the same person. What is your go-to vegetarian/vegan meal?
My go-to vegetarian/vegan meal. Okay.
Please.
I feel like this must be one of my followers who's come through my story to go to you, because I've been kind of going through a vegetarian vegan type journey in the last few months. I definitely say that I've found an affinity for miso. I absolutely love miso soup, miso noodles, miso flavored tofu. Big fan.
Yeah, good.
Very nice.
What about you, Jack, on that? Go on. What's your go-to?
I use HelloFresh and Mindful Chef. And
nice.
my dinner last night was a lentil curry thing. That's pretty good. Some of the vegetarian ones are actually the best meals in the packages. So
most Indian curries are vegetarian anyway, aren't they? So
there's a whole branch
meat's not there
that involves no meat.
Yeah.
I think my missus is flirting with the delivery man downstairs.
Hopefully. That's where your second child came from.
Well, I mean, Thing is, that would be weird because my second child's still white and delivery guy is black. So,
but you know, sometimes it just skips a generation. You know,
he's so excited about seeing her. When I opened the door once, he didn't even bother looking. He was like, "Hey, Sally!" Oh, when he saw me, and they're all like giggling back there. I think, "Oh, I got you back." Yeah. No, I'm not jealous.
Go on, Jack. Go on, Jack.
I wanted to my vegan go-to vegan meal. On Wednesdays, my mum fasts for religious purposes, and she makes this food called dolma, which is a Greek dish where it's rice and usually some sort of meat wrapped in vine leaves. Now on Wednesday, she does it without the meat, and it is delicious. So
Sounds good.
It's Greek, but with an Iraqi spin.
Mine's would be cereal.
Yeah, cereal.
Yeah.
Hold on.
That's
What
as
milk?
vegan as I get.
What milk?
Huh?
What milk?
What?
It can't be cow's milk or goat milk.
I can actually. I would quite like the barista oat milk.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really
That
thick.
stuff is
It's nice.
good.
Nice.
The adverts, like it's
That's amazing.
/help dad. Have you seen them?
Yeah.
Oh, hilarious. Love them.
Yeah, it is good, but that stuff's amazing. Like that's it. Yeah.
Okay, we had quite a few questions from Tom D Patel.
That's my brother.
Your brother.
Yes, Tom.
So
Thank you
questions.
very much.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Tom. You're our fourth viewer, Tom. You're our fourth viewer. Jack's mum is one.
Is it possible to use yoga as a weight loss tool?
Oh,
Is
good
that-
one. Yeah, I mean, it's possible to use hoovering as a weight loss tool.
Good
Just
answer.
do a lot of it and don't eat a lot, I guess. But I guess that's not really what I'm about. Try hoovering. I don't know.
Tom,
Yeah.
You should know your sister, man. Come on, man. Thanks, Tom, for the questions.
This is a hell of a question. Are there certain foods that would aid or hinder muscle stretching? If so, what should I eat or avoid?
I'm going to be totally honest here and say I have no idea if there are foods that aid or hinder stretching at all. As far as I know, the biggest factor on being able to stretch and lubricate the joints is hydration. I always, if I'm going to go do a big deep stretch session with clients, go and have a massive glass of water before we get started. Have one there with you. I don't mind if you have to nip out and go for a wee, but always stay really hydrated. So I don't actually know about the food side, but water, definite.
Top tip.
And don't eat loads of foods because you can't bend when it's in your belly.
Yeah, when your belly's full.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I can't touch. Yesterday I could touch my toes.
And then another yoga related question, again from Tom D Patel. Can you use yoga to increase strength too?
Absolutely. Yes. If you think about it, yoga is one big push workout. There's no pulling to it at all. So you can get some mad pecs going on. You can for sure build a lot of strength. There's a lot of foundational postures that would in the fitness world be very lunge-like, which obviously great for single leg strength. Various bits where you do chaturangas, which is essentially like a tricep push-up. So yeah, definite way to build strength for sure. It's a really good body weight training.
And you do a lot of time under tension essentially, don't you? Because you hold poses and so on. So you're actually just under load for a long period.
And you hold poses in a position of the muscle when it's stretched. And we all know that the muscle is strongest when it's short and contracted through a range of movement of in the weights room. But that stretch point very rarely gets worked on as much. And I think gymnasts are really good at it as well. And I suspect ballet dancers are really good at it as well, where they're really strong when the muscle's at its full extension. And I think yoga probably covers that as well. Does it, Becky? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just assuming.
Yeah, for sure. I think very much depends on the teacher. They may just go for that kind of deep passive flexibility. But yeah, if you get somebody that is going to give you a really nice, well-rounded class where you've got the deep stretches, but you've also got the strength, then yeah, you can totally do both.
Cool. Go on, one more, Jack. One more.
Yes, the last one. It's the last one.
Oh, excellent.
So this is from Rebecca McQuade, Dressage. I guess she's a horse, right? Dressage, right?
I'm glad you said rider.
Or it's a really strange surname.
Yeah. I'm glad you said rider as well, because I guess she's a horse. Sorry, Rebecca.
I think you kind of touched on this earlier, Becky, but it's tips to help with dysmorphic body image / body acceptance.
Sure. So yeah, we've gone through a couple of tips already, but relating it to exercise, get away from the mirror. Make the exercise totally about your feeling. Check in with how you feel at the beginning, during, and after you do your exercise, and not what you see in the mirror, whether that's kind of doing a yoga class in a studio. There's a lot of mirrors. Get rid. Zoom class is a great way to do that. If you're big into your kind of training, and maybe sometimes you check form in the mirror, get yourself a personal trainer or somebody to train with, that can kind of help you from that point of view. So in an exercise sense, make it not at all about aesthetics, and make it about enjoyment. Things like yoga where there's no mirrors, training where you've got somebody to spot you and watch you instead. Maybe things that don't involve mirrors at all, like boxing and pad work, and find something that you enjoy doing because of the feeling of it, rather than focusing on the aesthetic.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, thanks very much, Becky. I think that was really good, and I think I'd speak for all of us. So I'd say we would probably get you on again at some point if you're happy to.
Thank you. Yeah, of course.
But just before we go, just wanted to ask you, in terms of classes, you mentioned classes. Are you doing any online? I know you're doing some stuff with Stanza, but are you doing any Zoom classes at all right now that you want to tell anyone about? And if so, where to find them?
Yeah, plug away.
Absolutely, I'll go for it. So yes, I've got my live class with Stanza on their Instagram on a Monday, and then I've got a full week of Zoom classes, all yoga classes, morning and evening, and also a Saturday class as well. You can find me, Becky Health and Fitness, Facebook, Instagram. I've got a website as well, and all the details are there. And you just have to drop me a message and I'll let you know about everything that's going on.
Cool. Brilliant.
Yes.
Before we go,
I fully expect to see all of you in a class sometime soon.
Yeah,
especially you, Jack.
We will. We will. We'll have to at some point. We'll have to. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Before we conclude, have I forgotten anything? Have we missed anything?
You can always do it in a second one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, guys. And Becky, I'll see you the next time you're on. Guys, I'll see you next week.
See you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on, Becky.
Thank you.
Bye.